No way home. The 17-year-old British schoolgirl who joined IS is almost certainly dead. Khadija Sultana from East London fled to Syria last year with 2 schoolmates. Tonight, our exclusive story of her phone calls home and how her family tried to find an escape route out.
I don't have a good feeling, like I feel scared.
Well, you feel scared?
Yeah.
Why do you feel scared?
You know, if something goes wrong, like, that's it.
Khadija's family say she was frightened and desperate to come back to Britain, but now the phone calls have stopped. Also on News at 10 tonight. What looks like a chemical weapons attack in Aleppo leaves dozens of children fighting for breath and life.
We're pretty sure that it's chloride gas because of the smell. You don't need a doctor to know the smell of chloride.
Fourth time lucky, a new head for the child abuse inquiry. But can she earn the trust of victims?
It won't give them justice. It's going to really expose what we already know.
And 5 medals from 5 games makes Catherine Granger our most decorated female Olympian ever.
You know, you walk away with something that tomorrow morning, when you think, did it really happen? You just look at it and you go, yeah, it did.
This is ITV News at 10 with Raghi Omar.
Good evening. Tonight, News at 10 can reveal the extraordinary anguish of one British Muslim family's fateful attempt to help their daughter escape the clutches of the so-called Islamic State in Syria. Khadija Sultana was one of 3 teenage schoolgirls who willingly left their comfortable, loving homes in Bethnal Green, East London, last year to join the violent extremist group. But tonight we have the story of how Khadija became disillusioned with life in the medieval terror state and made plans to flee. Her family were formulating a plan to get her out of the group's headquarters in Raqqa and into Turkey, where they hoped to be reunited. But Khadija was killed before she could escape.
It's 18 months since they left. First to Turkey, then to Syria. 3 heartbroken families were left behind. ITV News has followed their stories. We travelled to Istanbul to trace the girls' route.
I don't really recognise my sister, the video, the CCTV we saw, because this is just not her.
But ever since, they've been trying to get them back to London. Tonight, we reveal how one of the girls wanted to return and her family's extraordinary attempts to orchestrate it after making contact from their East London home.
Things have changed. You know, the way she used to communicate with me, the way she used to talk about things is totally changed to what up until now she's scared of being there.
Her sister is Khadija Sultana, who was 16 years old when she left.
And then she told me that she got a job.
This is the start of a chain of events, of emotional exchanges that will end in tragedy. Khadija has told them the man she married in Syria has been killed and she wants to come back. From Raqqa, she's arranged a conversation with her sister.
I don't have a good feeling, like I feel scared
Well, you feel scared?
to do this. Yeah.
Why do you feel scared?
You know, if something goes wrong, like, that's it.
I know what you mean.
I'll never be able to.
I understand what you mean, and it is, you know, from where you are, I can understand that, you know, you're feeling like that is not abnormal. But the only thing I would say to you is just trust us.
You know, the borders are closed right now. So how am I going to get out? I'm not going to go through PKK territory to come out. I'm never going to do that ever.
They want her to leave in the back of a cab to get to a safe house.
Which side of the park is it on?
But first they have to establish her current location.
It's a square park, right? It's called Al-Baik. You know, the spelling is A-L and bike is B-A-I-K. But how confident are you, like, say, when things are put in place and you have to get on a cab? How confident are you feeling in terms of just that?
0.
Mum's home.
No, I want to speak to him.
You can call anyone at Mum's. She sounds very terrifying, you know, and she did get very emotional there as well. It just feels, well, I really feel helpless, really, thinking, you know, if I can just sit here, what can I do? It's really hard. I don't think she's ever made a choice by herself, has she?
No,
Anything.
that was the first one.
That was the first one and a very big one. But she's actually never ever made a choice by herself. I kind of just look forward for the next call. And that's what keeps me going. Okay, I know someday she's going to contact me and that's it.
But there wouldn't be many more conversations like this. The family received a call to say Khadija had been killed in an airstrike. This can't be verified, but the calls home have now stopped. Today, their former lawyer said there should be lessons for anyone trying to travel to Syria.
It's most unfortunate that that this situation has arisen, and one would hope that the only benefit out of this is as a tombstone and a testament to others of these are the risks actually involved in going to a war zone, to dissuade people from ever making that choice, really.
But Khadija didn't travel alone, and we don't know the intentions or the fate of the other girls she travelled to Syria with.
Rohit joins me in the studio now. Rohit, it's a heartbreaking story, but it's also incredibly sobering that it's all too easy to leave to join IS. Incredibly difficult and tragic to leave.
Some do try, many do fail, and as you say, this was incredibly heartbreaking for the family of Khadija Sultana, who had to deal with her departure first, then to try to comprehend the decision, and to finally now to deal with her death. And this was not something that they were hoping for at the back of their minds. They were every day actively trying to make this happen, trying to formulate that plan. But she appears to have made the same decision that so many British jihadists eventually do when they get to the so-called Islamic State, that the propaganda that they'd seen beforehand did not match the reality of life there. And so often, as appears to have been the case here, the equation leads to a simple conclusion that the risk of leaving and potentially being caught is greater than the risk of staying and potentially being killed by an airstrike, as appears to have happened here.
And what was really revealing, the insights into that piece that you did, was the extent to which the detailed plan that the family were trying to go through, looking at GPS images of trying to walk her through safe houses in and around Raqqa.
That's right. This plan was as complex as it was desperate. Satellite images, regular phone calls, the future use of that cab and of a safe house. Remember, though, it was her decision to stay. It was her decision to go in the first place, a decision that so many millions of Syrians wish they had. And it now appears that she's the first British female to have been killed in the caliphate since the launch of so-called Islamic State.
Revealing report. Rohit, thank you very much indeed. Well, as Rohit was mentioning there, from one British girl's attempts to flee Syria to the plight of hundreds of thousands of Syrians trapped in the besieged city of Aleppo. Having suffered such depths of misery through ceaseless bombardment, it's been hard to see how much worse life could get for them. But the UN now says there is mounting evidence of a toxic gas attack, chlorine, dropped on civilian areas heavily populated with children. Its special envoy said if proved, the attack would constitute a war crime.
Struggling for breath, struggling to survive. Doctors say these are the young victims of the latest attack that breaks all the rules of international conflict. Hospitals in Aleppo released these pictures, along with a strong claim from medical staff who say a banned chemical agent, probably chlorine gas, was used against the civilian population last night. This man said he heard bombs drop. Then there was a strong smell of gas. Children began screaming, then suffocating. Hospital CCTV captures the moment the first victims began to arrive. More than 60 people experiencing breathing problems, more than half of them children. All the victims are given oxygen, including small babies. 15 infants less than a year old were treated. All survived.
We know it's a chemical gas attack, and we're pretty sure that it's chloride gas because of the smell. You don't need a doctor to know the smell of chloride. So the whole patients, their clothes were smelling such as chloride.
Rescue teams, first at the scene of the bombing, believe they've recovered evidence of a war crime. They say this mangled metalwork is what remains of barrel bombs that contain the gas and were dropped from government helicopters onto the rebel-held district of Al-Zabdiyah.
As you can see here, a family lived here in this place exactly.
Abdul Khafi Al-Hamdo, who regularly sends eyewitness accounts from inside Aleppo for News at 10, went to the scene by daylight. Amid the destruction, he discovered the fate of pets unable to escape the gas.
Even animals, even birds couldn't escape from such crimes, from Assad crimes. I think he's trying to kill every kind of life here in this area.
Aleppo hospitals have reported 4 deaths, including brother and sister Sama and Mahmoud Raji and their mother. Others, like this boy, are seriously ill, showing apparent symptoms of chemical poisoning, but they can't be evacuated. Heavy fighting continues around Aleppo, and a 3-hour ceasefire Russian forces promised to introduce today was never going to be long enough to organise a safe route in and out of this city that's become a battlefield. The UN is pressing Russia for a 48-hour halt to hostilities, while promising to investigate what it describes as considerable evidence that Assad's forces last night committed a war crime. Paul Davis, News at 10.
2 bombs exploded tonight in the popular Thai holiday resort of Hua Hin, killing a woman and injuring at least 19 others. Many of those hurt were foreign tourists. There is no confirmation yet as to whether any British people were injured. Police in the southern resort say bombs were hidden in plant pots and were detonated within half an hour of each other. Now, after a terrific day yesterday, Team GB kept their medal momentum rolling in Rio with another strong day. The standout performer was the 40-year-old rower, Catherine Granger, who is now Britain's most decorated female Olympian after silver in the double sculls. It's a remarkable achievement, not least because it was only 2 years ago that she decided to come out of retirement.
There are memories that will last long after the Rio flame has been put out, and this is one. Catherine Granger, her 5th Games, her 5th medal, and with it the most decorated female Olympian in British history. In fact, it was so nearly even better. Agonisingly, with partner Vicky Thornley, Granger was edged out of gold. But given she wasn't even named in Team GB's original squad, today's success on its own really is something special.
Of all the work, of all the blood, sweat and tears, of all the, the pressure of that moment sitting in the start line and the heart pounding and the mind going crazy, and you walk away with something that tomorrow morning when you think did it really happen, you just look at it and you go, yeah, it did.
The Olympic adventure began for Catherine Granger with a silver in the quadruple sculls in Sydney. Another silver followed in Athens as part of the coxless pairs, and again in Beijing, narrowly missing out to the Chinese 4 in a nail-biting final. She finally got gold in the home Olympics 4 years ago. Granger then took a couple of years off, which prompted doubts today would ever be possible. But she returned, fought her way into the team at the last minute, and is now Britain's most decorated female Olympian. But you get the feeling she'd have done it all and still been happy not to win a thing.
I've loved being a part of Team GB every single time. It's something I'm immensely proud of, and the titles, the medals along the way are so special, but you don't expect to get those titles at the end of the day.
Granger says she'll now be packing her competitive oars away. Potentially, a career in criminal law awaits. But then she said something very similar 4 years ago.
Well, Steve joins me in Rio. Steve, all the attention inevitably on Catherine Granger and Victoria Thornley, but notable other successes for Team GB today as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. Not quite the rush of medals, Raggy, but of yesterday, but as you say, some notable successes today. In the individual event, David Florence in his canoe was very disappointed with what he did. But he teamed up with Richard Hounslow today to take silver in the canoe double slalom. They did exactly the same, by the way, 4 years ago in London. And there are no medals at stake in the velodrome, but the British women's team pursuit, including Laura Trott and Joanna Rousel-Shand, had an amazing run in qualifying. They set a new world record and as a result are obviously hot favourites for gold there. There will be a definite medal for Team GB a little later on. The men's rugby sevens have won their semi-final. They beat South Africa. Now they play Fiji in the final, and that means obviously either a gold or a silver.
So how would you assess the progress of Team GB so far then, Steve?
Well, I think it's going pretty well, I have to say. I think it's very useful to make a comparison with London 2012. We can do that now. We're on day 6, of course. At the end of day 6 in London, Team GB had 5 gold, 6 silver and 4 bronze, a total of 15 medals. Here, halfway through, or 3/4 of the way through day 6, 3 golds, 5 silvers, 6 bronze, and of course that rugby medal still to come. But I also think it's important because Team GB are trying here to have their best ever away games, to mention the medals in Beijing at the end of day 6. 7 medals in Beijing, so they've already doubled that here.
And very briefly, Steve, some unwelcome news about the Kenyan athletics team tonight.
Yeah, that's right, with all the furore about whether the Russians or not were going to compete because of their state-sponsored doping. A Kenyan sprint coach has been sent home tonight. He posed as an athlete, went to some drug testers, gave a urine sample and signed all the forms. Now, Kenya does have a problem with doping. It accepts that. 40 athletes have failed dope tests since London 2012. But this is obviously very unwelcome news for the Games here. It's unwelcome news for Kenya, and it's something we're going to hear a lot more about, I think, in the next 48 hours or so.
We will do. Stephen Ria, thanks very much indeed. Now, it's a job you'd be forgiven for turning down, especially as 3 previous incumbents all had to resign. But the Home Secretary has managed to find a new chair to lead the troubled independent child abuse inquiry. Professor Alexis Jay previously exposed the terrible scale of abuse against young girls in Rotherham. She's now tasked with getting the investigation into establishment abuse, which has been plagued with problems, back on track. But already her appointment is being criticised because she lacks a legal background.
Since it was set up 2 years ago, the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse has had something of a leadership problem. First, Baroness Butler-Sloss was forced to quit, as was her replacement Fiona Wolfe, due to links with the establishment. Next, their replacement, New Zealand Judge Dame Lowell Goddard, announced that she was standing down. Now the government has turned to the woman who led the inquiry into sexual exploitation in Rotherham, Alexis Jay. Despite finding herself in charge of an inquiry the previous incumbent described as haunted by a legacy of failure, the former social worker says, "I am committed to ensuring this inquiry does everything it is set out to do and does so with pace, with confidence and with clarity." Be in no doubt, the inquiry is open for business and people are busier than ever working hard to increase momentum. Those who support abuse survivors have welcomed her appointment, especially because she's already worked with the inquiry.
Alexis Jay has a huge amount of experience. She conducted a very thorough inquiry in Rotherham, and she has more than 30 years' experience of working in the kind of organisations that are going to come under the spotlight of the inquiry. I know that the staff and the panel members, and certainly the victims and survivors that I'm in touch with, seem to be very pleased that Alexis Jay is going to take this inquiry forward.
In her new role, Alexis Jay will be looking into allegations of abuse at Westminster, in the Anglican and Catholic churches, and at children's homes across the country. A former panel member, himself an abuse survivor, quit because he felt the inquiry was in chaos and questions if it is too much for one person to lead.
One of the things that Professor Jay has to do right at the start is clean out some of the toxic nonsense that's going on within that inquiry, and allow her and those around her who do support her, predominantly the other panel members, allow them to get on with the job. And if the inquiry itself needs to change its structure or its direction, then that's what needs to happen.
The appointment of Alexis J means that someone with prior knowledge of the inner workings of the inquiry will be at its helm. It is an attempt to generate, or perhaps more accurately create, pace in an inquiry that has been beset by delay and false starts. Emma Murphy, News at 10 at the Home Office.
If you were asked to name the most economically disadvantaged group in Britain, Muslim women may not necessarily be the first that springs to mind. But a report from MPs today said they are more likely to be unemployed than anyone else. It concluded that being both female and a Muslim means they are overlooked for jobs time and again, with the discrimination worse if the woman wears a headscarf. And it said urgent action is needed to change that.
Leicester is a prime example of multicultural Britain. The streets today bustling with people, predominantly from the Asian community. But a report from MPs says there remains a racial divide, which is preventing some from access to opportunity, particularly in the workplace.
Why he can go and why we can't go like that?
At this centre in Leicester, these Muslim women are getting help in building their confidence so they can find work. But the barriers are complicated. Muntazir Mullah faced resistance from her family at home when she wanted a job, but she also says fear of discrimination is holding her back.
I was thinking that, because of religion or something, we can't do what we want to do. And sometimes I also felt that I'm not that confident enough to go out in this society and work, because they might think that, she's a Muslim, she wears scarves and hijabs, so I might not get what I want.
The report shows the unemployment rate among the UK's 2.7 million Muslims is more than 12%. That's compared to around 5.5% of the general population. Almost 2/3 of Muslims out of work are women. This, they say, is down to discrimination, lack of role models and pressure from traditional families. Compared to their white Christian counterparts, Muslim women are 71% more likely to be out of work.
Tailoring for women, and I do tailoring for men as well.
Imtaz Khalik is at the top of her game. One of the leading bespoke tailors in Britain, she tours the world lecturing on fashion. What resistance she met in the early days in this traditional industry, she brushed aside, but still faces preconceptions.
You know, women used to come up to me and they'd read my name, I was a bespoke tailor, and they said, "Oh, I expected you to be dressed in Asian clothes." But that's not what I'm making, you know, so there's this whole image thing before you even start.
Amongst the measures suggested by MPs today is anonymous CVs to help Muslim applicants.
Getting your foot in the door by having a name-blind CV isn't going to necessarily secure you the job or keep it long-term. So that needs to be coupled with a much clearer understanding by employers of the law when it comes to discrimination.
Attitudes have changed, says the report. Stereotypes are being broken, but more change is needed to give the next generation a level playing field. Nina Nanar, News at 10.
Some good economic news for the northeast of England, which knows all about the pain of job cuts. It was just a year ago that 1,700 steel jobs were lost in Redcar. But tonight there is news of a major investment just up the road from there. Plans for a big new biomass plant close to Middlesbrough were confirmed. It will help power hundreds of thousands of homes by burning wood. Our economics editor Narina Hertz is here. Narina, it's quite a economic vote of confidence, not just for the northeast, but for the Leave votes, who were trying to bat away bad economic prognoses in the wake of Brexit.
Absolutely. This is a good news economic story at a time that there has been quite a lot of bad news. And it is a story of investment taking place right now in the United Kingdom at a time that some were concerned that investments had dried up. It's an investment, it's a plant, it's a story that has been 7 years in the making. And the project got together all its financing and issued the green light for it today. And we're not talking about a plant that's going to be built sometime in the future. They plan to start building it in weeks. Just to give you a sense of how significant this investment is, let me just take you through the numbers. So we're talking about an investment of £1 billion almost pounds that's going to create 700 jobs and also going to generate energy electricity for 600,000 homes. So this is very substantial.
And also, its biomass sounds very environmentally positive, but is it?
Well, it's definitely going to help us, the UK, meet our climate change commitments. And the company, in striking a deal with the government, has had to sign up to strict environmental and sustainable criteria. But there are some question marks over biomass itself, over how green it really is. Advocates say that biomass creates about 80% less carbon emissions than fossil fuels. But there are some concerns that not all biomass projects are actually equal. If the company does deliver on those fronts, well, then it will be both good for the environment and also good for the economy.
Norina, thanks very much indeed for bringing us up to date. The very public airing of the differences splitting the Labour Party got another opportunity to be, well, put on show tonight. The two contenders in the bitter leadership contest, Jeremy Corbyn and Owen Smith, went head-to-head at a hustings event in Gateshead. Simmering under the surface of their verbal sparring are two escalating disputes. First, between Corbyn and Labour's own governing body over who should be allowed to vote in the leadership contest, and then one involving his deputy, Tom Watson, who claims Mr Corbyn's left-wing militant supporters are infiltrating the party.
Jeremy Corbyn and Owen Smith, the second face-to-face debate before an audience of Labour members in Gateshead. And it was soon clear who this crowd would be cheering for.
I believe in people, their good sense, their good humanity and their determination to live in a decent, fair and equal society.
Owen Smith's tactics to call Jeremy Corbyn naive, unrealistic, the leader of a protest movement.
You know, it's not about the T-shirts we wear and the badges on our lapels. It's about power. It's about power.
I think people should wear any T-shirt they want to. It's what they do together that's important.
And as Owen Smith accused Jeremy Corbyn of leading Labour into years without power, this happened.
But if our message to the rest of the world is that the lights have gone out,
plunged into darkness.
And are we going to continue? Should we continue in the dark or what?
It's a return to the dark days of militant and hard-left infiltration of Labour that many MPs who oppose Corbyn fear the most. Tom Watson, Labour's deputy leader, says he can prove that left-wing activists banned from the Labour Party are involved in the Corbyn campaign.
There are a small number of members of Trotskyist organisations that have changed their approach and are instructing their members to rejoin the Labour Party.
Jill Mountford was expelled from Labour earlier this year for being a supporter of a far-left organisation. I showed her the evidence compiled by Tom Watson, which shows she's been canvassing for Jeremy Corbyn.
Witch hunting behaviour, accusations, mudflinging, they need to be thinking about good ideas, policies, politics. That's what they need to be thinking about.
And you're remaining defiant, you'll continue campaigning for Jeremy Corbyn?
I'm so defiant. You bet I'm going to continue to do my work. That's my job. I'm a socialist. I make propaganda for a better world.
A contest to lead one party, but clearly being fought by two figureheads for increasingly divided factions. Tomorrow, the Court of Appeal is due to rule on a legal battle over voting rights in the leadership election. Up to 150,000 supporters, assumed to be mostly pro-Corbyn, could be allowed to have their say. Angus Walker, News at 10.
And finally tonight, Donald Trump's poll ratings may be going down, but one young man was prepared to scale all the way up Trump Tower in hope of face-to-face meeting. He was using suction cups to scale the skyscraper, and it was not without drama, causing quite a stir in downtown New York. He managed to make it to the 21st floor of the building before being hauled inside. He never actually had any chance of meeting Donald Trump. He was at a rally some 600 miles away. And that's all for tonight. Over the news, over the horizon, a 4-day strike by Eurostar workers begins at midnight. RMT members are walking out because of a dispute over work-life balance. But Eurostar says only one train a day will be cancelled. And there may be some spectacular sights in the skies over Britain tonight. The Perseid meteor shower is reaching its peak, and in previous years, it's put on quite a show. That's all from all of us on the programme for this evening. I'll be back tomorrow night. Till then, bye-bye.